We're about to take a journey back in time. But we're not using a time machine. We're going to use a clock, a massive clock, built from the stars themselves that's been ticking for over 7,000 years. And this isn't some story about ancient myths. Nope, this is a detective story, uncovering a seriously sophisticated science written in the night sky by some of the world's very first astronomers.
So, just imagine for a second that you're an ancient astronomer. Your job is to create a way to measure time, not just for a season or even for your lifetime, but for ages to come. How would you even begin to do that? How do you build a calendar so precise and so tough that it can track thousands of years of history and still make sense to us today?
Well, the answer is just breathtakingly ambitious. You don't just rely on the same old cycles of the sun or the moon, you look deeper. You anchor your entire system to the slow, grand, almost unnoticeable movements of the stars themselves. You literally use the entire cosmos as your timepiece. But to pull that off, you need a brand new kind of map, a whole new way of charting the heavens.
And that brings us to the absolute heart of this ancient clock, the Nakshatras. Now, forget the 12 signs of the solar zodiac for a minute. This is a lunar system. While the sun gives us the year, the moon moves way faster, right? It finishes its cycle in about a month. So for a much more detailed map of the sky, these ancient stargazers divided the moon's path into 28 sections, or lunar mansions, each one marked by a major star. This created this super precise grid that they could use to measure the slow drift of a solar event, like an equinox, over centuries.
Okay, now here is the secret key. This is the thing that lets us wind this clock backward. It's a phenomenon called the precession of the equinoxes. Just think of the Earth like a spinning top that's got a little wobble. This really slow wobble, which takes almost 26,000 years to make just one cycle, means that the position of the sun against the stars on the first day of spring, the vernal equinox, isn't fixed. It slowly drifts backward through those nakshatras. And by tracking which nakshatra hosted the vernal equinox, these ancient astronomers basically created a celestial timestamp for their entire era.
So, here's our roadmap for this journey. We're going to start by finding a solid historical anchor point. Then we'll use that cosmic wobble to travel back in time, watching the sky itself change. We'll push all the way back to the very dawn of this system, see how this incredible knowledge was passed down, and by the end, you'll be able to see the story written in the stars for yourself. Let's get into it.
All right, to go back in time, you first need a firm place to start. And for our story, that place is the beginning of the Yudhishthira era. This was a really pivotal moment that brilliantly connects what's happening in the heavens with a specific time and a physical location right here on Earth.
Get this, calculations from a bunch of ancient astronomical texts all point to one single precise year, 2448 BC. And I want you to understand, this isn't some vague, mythological, once-upon-a-time date. This was a scientific benchmark, a moment when they basically hit save on their cosmic clock, figuring out and locking in incredibly detailed astronomical constants.
Now, what's so cool here is how this all comes together: history, geography, and astronomy. In 2448 BC, they set up a prime meridian, kind of like their own version of Greenwich in England, right at Kurukshetra, the famous battlefield from the Mahabharata. This literally grounded their cosmic clock to the Earth, and the era itself kicked off on a full moon on the vernal equinox, a moment of perfect celestial and earthly alignment.
And this is the absolute key for our journey. During this Yudhishthira era, the new year, which they marked by the vernal equinox, happened when the sun was in the nakshatra of Rohini, the star we know today as Aldebaran. This gives us our first solid pin on the cosmic map. We know that in 2448 BC, the equinox was in Rohini. Now, we can start winding the clock backward.
Okay, so now we have our anchor. With Rohini as our starting point in 2448 BC, we can finally start winding that clock back, following the trail of the vernal equinox as it moves backward, or retrogrades, through the sky because of that Earth wobble. This is where the nakshatras really become a timeline of history. And this timeline just shows the journey perfectly. If you look at our modern era, the equinox is in a nakshatra called Ashwini. But as we go back in time, we pass through Rohini, right around that Yudhishthira era we just talked about. Before that, you see Kritika, which you might know as the Pleiades star cluster. And as we push even further back, we get to the very beginning of the trail, Ardra. Each of these stops on the timeline is a huge leap into the past. And here's the proof that this was a living, breathing, observational science.
The ancient sources show that during the Kritika period, the system itself actually got an update. The number of lunar mansions was officially changed from 28 to 27. This wasn't a mistake, it was a scientific revision. Maybe they found that 27 divisions better matched the moon's actual orbit of 27.3 days, which would make their long-term math even more accurate. They were refining their tools, just like any good scientist would.
So this backward journey through Rohini and Kritika is leading us to our ultimate destination, the most ancient origins of the entire system, a time when the new year was marked by a constellation known as Ardra. We are now getting close to the very dawn of this astronomical tradition.
So how can we possibly be sure about a date that's so far in the past? Well, it's because the evidence isn't just in one old manuscript. It's actually embedded, almost like a fossil, in the very structure and rules of later astrological systems that were built on top of this ancient foundation.
And here it is. This is the stunning conclusion from the source material. By tracing that precession all the way back, we land in a period around 5000 BC. At this time, the vernal equinox was in the Nakshatra Ardra, which corresponds to the star Betelgeuse in the constellation Orion. This marks the earliest traceable beginning of this entire cosmic clock. That's 7,000 years ago.
And here's the backup evidence. Even much later systems that were used for charting life events known as dashas, they preserved this ancient memory. The oldest of these systems don't start their count from whatever the current first nakshatra was, they begin with Ardra. It's like a fossil embedded in the system's DNA, a piece of ancient data preserved for millennia, pointing directly back to that 5000 BC origin point.
So this incredible scientific knowledge wasn't just held by a few observers looking at the sky. It was written down, preserved, and passed down through some of India's most ancient and sacred texts, and each one played a different role in the process.
Think of it like this. The Rig Veda contains the earliest symbolic hints, describing the Milky Way not just as stars, but as the Somadhara, the celestial stream of the sacred drink Soma. The Atharva Veda gives us crucial historical context, confirming the lists of nakshatras they use during certain periods. But then you get a text like the Surya Siddhanta, and wow, this is basically a technical manual, an ancient piece of astronomical software, just filled with sophisticated math. It had algorithms to calculate planetary positions and even to correct for errors over long periods. This wasn't just philosophy, this was the engineering blueprint of their cosmic clock.
Now, to really put this all in perspective, it helps to see how different it is from the Western system that most of us are familiar with. The Western zodiac is tropical, which means its starting point is fixed to the season of spring. The Indian system is sidereal, which means related to the stars. Its starting point is anchored to an actual physical star, and that is why it can track precession. The tropical system ignores it, but the sidereal system makes it the very engine of its long-count calendar. It's a fundamental difference.
So, as we pull all these different threads together, the picture that we get is not one of some primitive sky myths. What we see is a deliberate, long-term, and amazingly precise scientific project.
So let's break it down. The key takeaways are these. Ancient Indo-Aryan astronomers absolutely understood and were actively tracking the 26,000-year cycle of precession. Their system of nakshatras can be traced all the way back to around 5000 BC when the star Ardra marked the new year. The Yudhishthira era stands as this incredible achievement, fixing astronomical constants and linking the cosmic calendar to a prime meridian right here on Earth. And maybe the most important point of all, this whole thing was a continuous scientific project that spanned millennia.
It really just makes you wonder, doesn't it? We started this journey with a pretty simple question. How do you build a calendar that lasts for millennia? And the answer we found was a 7,000-year-old story of incredible science and observation. So it just begs the question, what other profound histories are still out there, hiding in plain sight, just waiting for us to look up and read them in the light of ancient stars?